That might help.
The gladiator start.
Yeah, I've gotten them.
Okay,
Yeah, right.
okay, sorry. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
I apologize to everyone. I had to be able to get my computer up and going and and so I'm sorry, we're starting a little late. It's 2:06 and we're calling the meeting to order. Beth, your secretary, where'd Beth go? Oh, I knew she was here. Call roll, please.
Yes. Kathy Batchelor,
Here.
Candy English,
Here.
Beth Dingman here. Nellie Johnson,
Here.
Bart Hillier,
Here.
Steve Reynolds,
Here.
Dave Barker. Nope.
Has anyone heard from Dave?
I got I got a text from him. I'll just read it. He says, I'm in the meeting, but auto muted. Not sure if they know, but just in case, wanted to let someone know. So I think Dave is with us.
Okay, thank you.
Marge Garneau, Bev Lawless,
Here.
Lanny Smith,
Here.
Jody Walker.
You're muted, Jody.
I see you, but I can't hear you.
Does it show that it's muted?
There you go. There you go.
Scott Summers here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Are there any amendments to the agenda or can I have an motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Beth.
Second.
Thank you, Bev.
My mouth's not full.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so we have 9 that we can see have approved. Any opposed? Well, I can't see anybody I can't see Dave, and so he doesn't have audio, so we'll just have to go with the approval of the agenda. Item 3 is the staff presents the recommended fee schedule, operating budget, and capital improvement plan and capital budget. And Scott's going to present that. Before we go to Scott, I would like to make give a really big shout out and thank you to Natalie Whitman. I am not paid enough money to read 65 pages worth of legalese presented by an engineer. I don't understand it. I can't even look at the pictures and say this is good, bad, or indifferent. But Natalie prepared, according to Scott, Natalie prepared a 2-page summary before that 65-page report. And I would like to sincerely thank her for all of her efforts because it's the only reason I knew what that report said. So Natalie, if I don't see you over there. Oh yes, there you are.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing that for us because it was way beyond my abilities. And I know that our staff is capable of doing that. And you just showed me why. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Beyond that, I'm going to move on to Scott and I would like to ask a question though, Scott. Are you going to want to take questions as we go from the board?
I would prefer to get through the
Okay.
presentation because I think some of the questions might get answered as I'm giving the presentation.
Okay, good enough. Everybody heard that? Thank you.
My turn.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's, hey, it's all right. I want to thank you all for coming today. This is a work session on the budget. It's riveting. It's very exciting. Talking about a lot of numbers, a lot of interesting things. I'd like our leadership team to introduce ourselves, and we will start with David to the right. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you come up to the microphone? Because I did not hear a word you said. And if you could give us your name and your GVR number, that would be helpful. Hang on just a second. Somebody's going to help you.
I was able to hear her.
Were you?
Yeah. Yes.
In the south of Brago Pool.
This is a budget meeting. And so there will be a discussion on whether or not money stays in the budget to repair the pool. But this isn't a meeting on whether the pool will be rebuilt. But it's really just about, are we going to allocate funding or not? Just to be clear.
Thank
So you're in the right meeting.
I am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
You're very
you.
welcome. All right, David, will you please introduce yourself with your title, and then we'll move over to the other table.
Hello, I'm David Webster. I'm the Chief Financial Officer.
Let's go to left. Yeah, there we go. Randy, you want to introduce yourself? Thank
My
you.
name is Randy Cheatham, and I'm the IT Director.
Nancy Moyo, I'm admin supervisor.
Natalie Whitman, Operations Chief.
Chris McNeely, HR Director. Steve Kindred, Recreation Program Director.
Chris Zubicki, I'm Member Services Director. Antoinette Snow, Field Services Manager.
Great, thank you all. We don't get to see each other all in the same room, so I wanted to make sure we took this opportunity to introduce everyone. So with that, I was reminded as these cookies were being handed out of when I was a city manager at one point, and I had a public works director at the beginning of every annual budget work session. He would hand out gum to the council, and he would say, chew on the gum and not the budget. So I'm going to ask you to chew on the cookie and not the budget. All right. So here we are. We're talking about the proposed and recommended 2026 budgets. Oh, wow, we've got fly-in things. I didn't know that. All right. So some of the 2026 budget goals, the proposed 2026 budget meets GVR's mission of providing excellent facilities and services that create opportunities for recreation. Can you all read this? Am I showing?
You're good.
I am showing my screen. All right. Recreation, social activities, and leisure education to enhance the quality of our members' lives. The proposed 26 budget meets goal number 4 of the strategic plan, which is to cultivate and maintain a sound financial base that generates good value for our members. The 26 recommended operational budget is based on the actual expenditures that GVR anticipates for 2026 per bylaws Article 3, Section 2. Budget goals continued. The corporate policy manual, Section 5.5.2B, annually, staff will prepare a tentative budget calendar based on a required budget approval of no later than November 15th. Now, right now, the board is scheduled to consider approval on October 22nd. We're hopeful that we will have an approved budget on that date, but if we don't, then we have a little bit more time. And I'm not encouraging you to take it. And C, GVR shall annually adopt a balanced budget where operating revenues are equal to or exceed operating expenditures. Okay, budget development. Budget process began in August of 25 when the CEO and the CFO met with each department director to review and discuss their budget needs and requests. Staff developed a draft budget that the Fiscal Affairs Committee, FAC, reviewed on September 16th, and that is titled Original Staff Budget in your staff report. The Fiscal Affairs Committee continued to review the operating draft budget and the draft capital budget on September 23rd. The FAC's recommendations from that meeting are included in today's staff report, pages 4 through 5, and that is titled Revised Budget Updated by FAC. Staff then provided updates to the Fiscal Affairs Committee recommendations based on updated wage information. This is updated in pages 4 and 5 also, and it is titled Staff Revisions to the FAC Updates. As you can see, we've had several iterations to this draft, and I'm going to break each one down so that you can see the high points of what each draft proposed and then what the recommended changes were. So we'll start off with the original staff recommendation, key components. Member 2026 dues rate increase from a current $530 to $540 annually. That's a 1.9% increase. The member change fee and the initial fee for 26 would increase from $3,100 to $3,200. That's a 3.2% increase. And then due to increased revenue resulting from lower housing sales, the 26 personnel costs included a recommended very modest $110,000 or 2.5% aggregate increase in wages. This was offset by a total decrease of 2.8 full-time equivalents, FTEs, for a total of 88 full-time equivalents in 2026. The 2.5% recommended increase did not fully account for inflation or merit increases. And again, we recommended that change because of the decrease in housing sales. We were somewhat hoping for better times on the horizon and thought we might be able to kick the can a little bit, although that isn't ideal. And you will see where FAC didn't agree with that strategy. We also didn't include any allowance for non-reserve capital projects. The FAC recommendations. The first one was to eliminate the member change fee, also known as the MCF refunds, other than those required by law, in order to generate additional revenue. This change is proposed to occur mid-year 2026. And why is that down there? That's funny. What's happening here? We're going backwards. All right, we're going to go to the second bullet. Because of the refund elimination, there's increased funding to the initiatives fund by approximately $30,000 in 2026. And the next bullet, increase wages. They recommended increasing the wages by about $260,000 or 5.9% to fully implement the board's original 3-year compensation plan, which includes increases to cover inflation and merit increases. So when staff took its recommendation to the fiscal affairs, again, recall we were very conservative. We recommended a 2.5. This is supposed to be your 3-year plan. We're in the 4th plan. This would push it into the 4th year. This would push this into the 5th year. The Fiscal Affairs Committee was very concerned about that and recommended that the plan be fully funded in 2026. With that being moved forward, corresponding payroll taxes would have to be increased by another $11,400. There was also a recommendation to increase professional fee expenses by $10,000 to allow for improved digital marketing. They also amended the tenant fee structure and rates and recommended those changes. And then based on all of that information, the members' dues rates would be recommended for an increase from the current $530 to $545, which is a 2.8% increase. I'm going to turn to the chair of the committee, the Fiscal Affairs Committee, Nellie Johnson, to see if she has anything else she wanted to add at this point.
Thank you very much. The Fiscal Affairs Committee started working on issues that were going to be impacting the budget beginning in May and June, looking at the housing forecast for sales, because we knew in the past couple of years the housing forecast was lower than expected. One of the requirements in our CPM is not just to look at an annual budget, but also to look at a 3-year forecast. And so that's why the document includes it. So when we look at the revenues and expenses, we need to look at it not only for this budget, which we approve, but also have an idea of where our resources are going and how it's impacted. And so as we looked at the housing sales, and the reason why we basically said we had to generate additional revenues, we basically agreed that the slower trend that was happening was probably going to be continuing into the future, and for a number of reasons. One is the boomer generation population is aging out. Our research also showed that the age group of 55 to 65 was going to be slightly declining, and that those individuals are looking at renting versus owning a facility. The third point we discussed in our committee was that the family size has changed, where individuals would have, 4 or 5 kids, and then one of their kids would purchase the home in Green Valley. That's changing with the family structure having less than two children. And so those are some of the national demographics that impacted a slower trend. But more specifically related to GVR is basically we're landlocked as far as new developments. When we look at the new expansion, you really can't look at going back 10 years because we don't have the land to expand anymore. We have limited development in Solterra, and then the Canoa Ranch expansion, which we had looked at, which goes all the way to Amato, is not going to be a designated GVR property, and that was something that we learned. So collectively, we looked at that, and with the staff agreed that the revenues were going to be less. At the same time, we did a review of our reserve studies, and that went back over the past year. And when you look at our reserve studies in the MM&R fund, you will see that for the facilities now only, those facility, in order to maintain our facilities, are increasing by 7.7% over what we expected. And that's documented in our Browning study. In addition, our pool funds, as we gave the presentation to the board in February of this year, is not adequately funded. Our pools are old. We have 13 pools at the time we looked at it, and the reserves are inadequate at the time to meet our kind of targets. And so we knew we had to put additional dollars into the pool fund. So with those pressures of having the lower housing sales and the inflationary adjustments being at 7%, we looked at revenue enhancements so that we could balance out the member dues against revenue enhancements. And so as we go through this, you will see that, and we looked at 18 different areas where we could adjust the revenues. And the one that we adopted where we needed the dollars in order to balance the budget through the next number of years was the capital revenue fee. And it's probably not something that you would do if you had home sales excelling like we had in the past, but is something that in protecting the increase in the member dues, and we felt that a 2.8% increase in the member dues, which is what FAC recommended, was adequate. Particularly, it met the when you looked at the Social Security and 50% of Social Security and 50% of the COLA, it came in at about 2.8%. So it's really a balancing act that the FAC looked at. Since, as Scott has pointed out, since the FAC meeting, we learned that there was an adjustment in the wages. So that allows us to adjust the member fee down a bit. However, again, if there are additional dollars, maybe those dollars, and I think we'll have that discussion, could be placed in the pool reserve, in essence, to build up that reserve for our future needs. So those are some of the highlights that I think are important, that we really are looking at this as a budget for 2026, but also what impact our decisions have, making sure that we can be balanced in 27, 29 with a balance between dues, revenue enhancements, and having an adequate wage package that allows us to retain and hire and recruit quality staff. Thank you.
Thank you. We had 2 additional recommendations. Oh, wait a minute. Here it is. I forgot the pool one. There it is. Increase 2026 funding for the MR Pool and Spas Fund by another $7,700 to meet the 7% escalation in annual funding goal. And then we had 2 additional that weren't specifically related to the budget approval process, but definitely impact funding. And those recommendations were to change the CPM language, requiring clubs that request dedicated space for expansion to enter into an MOU with GVR, and the other is to investigate a pilot program on financing options for the voluntary deed-restricted properties that are interested in joining GVR. We're planning on bringing those two discussions and questions back to the board, I believe, in November. Okay, so I want to thank the FAC, the Fiscal Affairs Committee, for all the great work that they did in moving this forward. And on behalf of our staff, we certainly appreciate the interest in supporting and proposing a wage package. The good news, as we see it, is we were able to go back and take a look at our anticipated wage numbers in order to meet market for 2026. And we had overestimated on our first glance at a very complicated spreadsheet that is put together by an outside consultant. So what we are recommending is a decrease in the aggregate wage increase to 4% instead of the 5.9% first recommended by the Fiscal Affairs Committee. And as we talk more about that, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more in detail, that absolutely meets market, and I'll get into some more details on what that means. As a result of that decrease of 177,000 in aggregate wage increases, the membership dues rate revision would come down to 538 from the 545 recommended by the FAC. And again, this is as a result of lower increases in wages than we originally anticipated. So I want to talk a little bit about the compensation philosophy that the board approved in 2023. GVR is committed to attracting and retaining the best available talent in service to GVR's strategic plan and the communities it serves. This compensation philosophy prioritizes 1, competitive wages, 2, equitable pay among employees performing similar work, and 3, consideration of performance as a determining factor. It is supported through the development of a standardized application of a pay plan. The pay plan was designed to be market-driven and is based on a comprehensive analysis of GVR's labor market. GVR's compensation philosophy includes a strategy to eventually meet the labor market. The pay plan will be overseen by the CEO in collaboration with the CFO and will be administered by the Human Resources Director. The compensation philosophy and pay plan will be reviewed annually and adjusted as needed to continuously balance competitive pay with organizational goals, as well as to respond to changes with the labor market. Determining wage rates is a very complicated process, but that's why we have an expert that helps us with this. A little bit more on wages and how this has been implemented. Since 2023, GVR has been implementing the board-approved compensation philosophy through a consultant-developed pay plan. The pay plan assigns every position a pay range with a minimum, midpoint, and maximum, representing the competitive pay levels for that job in the relevant labor market. The objective of the implementation was to ensure that all positions at GVR were placed within these externally validated ranges, not below market and not above market. When the plan was first introduced, GVR could not afford to bring every position up to market immediately. The board's compensation philosophy did not prescribe a specific percentile or target, only that pay be competitive, equitable, and performance informed, so the implementation strategy was structured to advance gradually over several years. The good news is by 2025, after multiple phases of implementation, every position's pay range was validated against the market and confirmed to fall between the minimum and the maximum. While 2025 increase was smaller than originally planned, cumulative progress from prior years brought all positions within that range. Therefore, the 26 range maintains the alignment through a 2% market update, and that is included in the 4% overall aggregate that we are recommending. So let's talk about the operating revenue budget. This is with the staff adjusted FAC recommendations. Total revenue compared to 2025 increases $364,000. That's a 2.9% increase. The members' dues rate based on current information would increase from $530 to $538. Membership change fee increase would be from $3,100 to $3,200. The budget that we're talking about at this moment does assume elimination of the member change refunds that are allowable by law, which would result in a $150,000 increase in revenue in 2026, since this would be a July 1st implementation. This would result in $300,000 plus revenue in subsequent years. And of course, the elimination of that refund would require a CPM change by the board. How does that affect dues based on our current forecast? For 2027, we're anticipating those dues would have to increase $557 to $557 total. For 2028, we anticipate those dues would be $567, and for 29, they'd be $581. These are all forecasting, so we really don't know till we get there, but it's like an estimate in the future. Did I miss something here? No, we're good. I want to talk again about this primary source of revenue as well as the member change fee, but I want to start with dues. You can look at this chart on page 8 of your budget message. What this shows, the orange line with the top line, red, orange, is the actual, what the dues would be if they actually followed the CPI West Coast cost of living adjustment index. The blue line, which is the one below that, is what the actual member dues rates are. You can see back in 2001, is my little cursor working here at all? Yeah, right here, 2004, my mistake. The dues increases were about as close as they had been to the cost of living increases. And you can see in subsequent years, we've gotten away from that and haven't increased dues at the rate of inflation. We were somewhat closer back in 2016 and 17, but pretty much every year since, we've seen dues only slightly increase compared to inflation. Certainly after COVID, you can see significant increases here in cost of living, and I think a lot of us remember that. Let's talk about the member change fee rate of increases compared to the dues rate of change increases. The orange line or red line represents the cumulative member change fee rate increase as a percentage, and the blue line represents the cumulative dues rate increase percentages. And you can see how those have tracked each other over the years, but back in 2015, 16, and 17, they were basically parallel. The increases to dues was slightly higher than it was to the member change fee. Back in 2019, that switched. You could see where there was more emphasis through greater increases as a percentage to the member change fee than the dues. That trend has continued to where we can see in 2026, way out here, they're quite a bit further. In other words, as a percentage, GVR has relied more on the member change fee, not refunds, but which is the result of housing sales, as opposed to dues, which is great when housing sales are high. We were seeing surpluses of about $500,000 in roughly 21 and 22. The opposite has now occurred because we have seen a decrease in housing sales, and we have been faced with $500,000 shortfalls annually as a result of that. Again, as an organization, this chart shows that we've become more increasingly reliant on the member change fee to fund our operations. This is a revenue summary. This is a summary of all of our revenue that is being proposed and anticipated. The first column right here is the 25 budget. The next one is the 26 budget, and this is the staff amendments to the Fiscal Affairs Committee changes. So this is affecting this highlighted portion here, which is primarily just the dues piece. And we can see in the 25 budget, we were generating about 7.3 million in dues. And with this increase, we're recommending or anticipating another 121,000 in dues. Capital revenue, you can see in 25, we budgeted an anticipated number of 2.7 million. This year, we're anticipating $3 million in capital revenue. Why? Most of that is because we've recommended a $100 increase to the member change fee and the initial fee of $100 from $3,100 to $3,200. The other is the elimination mid-year of the refund, and that's $150,000. So total, did I get that right?
Got it.
Oh, thank you. Membership revenue, therefore, would increase. We're anticipating about $480,000. Recreational revenue, this is our programs, this is instructional. We budgeted a little bit more than we probably should have in 25. We ratcheted that down about 72,000 in 26. We're still very eager and aggressive to improve and expand programming and programs, but maybe not quite as much, as we thought we would in 25. Instructional are those classes and courses where we get revenue and then we have to give the money, pay back 70% to the instructor. So recreational revenue overall is down 54,000. Investment income, we've maintained and kind of kept that flat at 435,000. We have a communications revenue, which is a cell tower lease, the one out here at West Center, and then we have some over at Desert Hills. That's about $49,000 in revenue. Other income, last year we budgeted 173. This year we're budgeting 121. That is primarily because last year we implemented a 3% credit card fee, and not surprisingly, a lot of people used their credit card a lot less, and so we didn't generate the revenue that we anticipated, which, shame on us, we probably should have figured that out. So that's down 51,000. Total other revenue, or did I get that wrong? I got that wrong. Okay, other revenue is the total then. So this 60,000 here is again primarily a decrease from those credit card fees. So total operating revenue for 25 was 12.6. We're now looking at 12.9. That is again a $364,000 increase, or 2.9% from 25. Here's what that looks like in a pie chart. The big blue is 57.9. That is from membership dues. Capital revenue is 23%. That's this gray one. Recreational revenue is 8.2. This is the yellow one. We have member fees at 6.1%, and then investment income at 3.3. Let's talk a little bit about dues and fees. This is a little complicated. It's going to take a minute or two to get through it, but based on what we've shared with you so far, you can see the column. Where's my cursor? It's gone. It's vanished. All right, well, oh, there it is. Okay. Column on the left, actual rate for 2025. The next column is the recommended dues or rate from the Fiscal Affairs Committee after staff adjusted the dues rate. So for dues, again, we're looking at an increase from 530 to 538. Same with life care membership, 530 to 538. Transfer fees, a $5 increase of 465 to 470. Guest card policy, we're recommending a decrease here from $15 to $10. Couple reasons. One, we think $10 is a more reasonable rate for a guest coming to visit GVR. And the other, we're going to talk about that a little bit down here at the bottom, which is a card issuance fee of $5 that we're proposing. And I'll talk to that in a minute. We're proposing, and the FAC recommended, a weekly pass, guest pass, which would be $30. A guest card annual pass would increase from $80 to $85. I know there's been some discussion about, do we keep the annual pass or do we transition it to a punch card? This budget doesn't contemplate the difference between the two. Regardless, we're still recommending the same fee increase, whether it's a punch card or the current annual pass. All the tenant fees are recommended to go up $5 until we get to the tenant fees for the 4 to 12 month passes. Currently, they're $170. Now, the Fiscal Affairs Committee recommended breaking that 4 to 12 months out into specific months. Therefore, the recommendation for a 4-month tenant fee would be $180. A 5-month pass would be $215, and a 6 to 12-month pass would be $250. An additional cardholder fee. I want to explain a little bit what this is. Most households in Green Valley either have 1 or 2 persons living in their household, and dues are based on household, and those people that are listed on title are entitled to a membership card. You could have one person on title, you could have 5 people or more on title. All of those people are entitled to a membership card. Most, however, are 1 or 2 person households. Therefore, if a household is paying $530 right now, if you were to divide that household by the 2 persons that are living there, that comes to $265 basically per person. An additional card holder fee is another person that's living in the house that isn't on title. They live there. It could be a child, it could be a friend. We don't know, but it's just somebody else living in the house. Now, they have to prove they live there by showing their driver's license, a bank statement, a utility statement, whatever that may be. So in the interest of fairness, we had a good discussion on if each person in the household is essentially charged $235 a year for their membership, shouldn't the additional card fee holder be closer to that $235 when right now it's $105? So what staff has recommended, and so far what the Fiscal Affairs Committee agreed to, was to increase that fee $35 every year for the next 5 years, so that it, after 5 years, is much closer to that $235. So for the first year, 2026, the recommendation is $140 for that additional card fee. Still a bargain when you're comparing it to the $235 that really most other people are paying. Here's the member change fee increase we talked about, going from $31 to $3,200. Same with the initial fee. Late fee we're keeping flat at $25. Same with the estate planning fee at $105. Here's the card issuance fee. Now, we don't have this now, but we're recommending it. This is the same card that we all get. We all have one of these. We issue this card to tenants, and we issue it to guests as well, life care members, etc. We've been struggling with people throwing away their card or giving them to somebody else, and then we lose track of them. We wanted to create some incentive for people to hold on to their card and reuse them if they could reuse them. So what we're proposing is that we do an issuance fee of $5. And you'll notice that $5 corresponds right with the decrease in $5 from this daily guest pass from $15 to $10. That means really it's a revenue neutral or cost neutral change. But what it does, hopefully, is encourage, those guests or those members that actually have those cards to hold them and to reuse them. Once your guest has used that card, we can reuse that card for the next time your guest is in town. You can either come to the customer service office, or you can even call us, and we can reload that card for whether it's a daily pass or a weekly pass or an annual pass. So this was a way to incentivize them to hold on to those and reuse those instead of those cards kind of ending up wherever. The current card replacement fee is $20. But since we know that we can issue a card for $5, we're recommending that we decrease that replacement card to also $5. A little complicated, but hopefully clear. All right, let's go into the expenses. Again, wage line item includes a 40%, my goodness, a 4% aggregate rate increase for wages. Employee benefits includes a 5% mid-year rate increase, so that's half the year. Half the year is 5%, half the year, the rest of the year is another 5%. So total year would be a 10%. But since it's a mid-year time when we start our new benefits plan, it's only a 5-year percentage increase to our benefits. Also a 5-year mid-rate increase for commercial business insurance. We're going to show you a little bit more how commercial business insurance is impacting our budget. This is the expense budget summary, broken down by functional areas, facilities and equipment. Do I want to start there? Or do I want to go into some details? Yeah, let's start with there. If there's questions, we can answer those. But facilities equipment, we're looking at a 2.9% increase from 3.2 to 3.3 million. We've talked a bit about the wages. Right now they're at 4.653,000 was what was budgeted. We're recommending and anticipating 4,584,000. That's a decrease of $69,000 or 1.5%. That's primarily because we have a decrease of 2.8 full-time equivalents, FTEs. While this also includes a 4% increase. Payroll taxes, of course, are going to come down a little bit since wages are going to come down. And then benefits, we just talked about that. We underestimated benefits in 2025, unfortunately. That was on us. We've budgeted, we think, appropriately for 26, which is showing a $100,000 increase. Normally, we wouldn't see a 13.6% increase. We generally try to budget for at least a 10%, which is what we've done this year, and we think 10% is good. So total personnel, currently 5,813,000, increasing 24,000 to 5,837,000. That's a 0.4% increase in personnel costs for 26. I think that's pretty remarkable. Programs, food and catering. Catering and food is coming down a little bit, 13,000. We don't provide food or catering to all of our board meetings and all of our staff. I just want you all to know that. What this includes, this is all of the food and the vending that we do for our events and our performances. Recreational contracts, slight decrease of 60,000 from 712 to 651. Remember, on the revenue side, we decreased our revenue to some degree because we overestimated what we would spend in 25. Now we're ratcheting it down a little bit. This is really a pass-through, and so when that comes down, so do our contracts. So that's coming down $60,000. Bank and credit card fees down slightly. So program dollars are down $87,000 for the reasons that I've said. Communications, up a little bit in printing because we're recommending a separate events program this year so that we can be a little bit more competitive with our friend up Continental at CPAC. They're great at getting their catalog out a little bit before we are. And for those of you that get really excited about your catalog, you start marking it, you're buying tickets, and we want to be able to get in on that game as well. Let's see here. Operations, supplies, slight increase in supplies. Postage relatively flat. Same with dues and subscriptions. Travel is about the same. Other operating expenses about the same. Total operations, slight increase of 3.3%. Information technology, a slight increase of 5,700. Professional fees, here's one we want to talk about a little bit. For 25, we budgeted 170,000. For 26, we're budgeting 234. That's an increase of 63,000. We're coming to the end of our 5-year strategic plan. The new plan will go into effect January 1 of 2027, which means we need to update and build the strategic plan in 2026. This budget includes $50,000 for strategic planning assistance in 2026 that again would go into effect January 1 of 2027. It also includes $10,000 to increase digital marketing. That could help us create a video for a page on our website and also work with Google to optimize Google searches so that when people are Googling great retirement centers and communities, GVR has a greater propensity to pop up and be at the top of the list. Commercial insurance, I told you it is really a huge chunk of the budget, and it is. For 2025, we budgeted $417,000. This year, we're budgeting $447,000. It's an increase of $30,000. That's an astonishing number to me. We hope we don't have to use it, and we sure want to make sure we have it, but we're finding this with other competitors, the Sun Cities of the world, Quail Creek, et cetera. Everybody's commercial insurance is increasing significantly. Taxes, we're budgeting about the same. We're hopeful that we will be able to get a decrease this year and that we won't have to pay some property taxes that we have on some properties like the clubhouse. We're working on that, but we wanted to make sure we had money in the budget in case we didn't. Conferences and training about the same, 25,000. Employee recognition, we went up $500. I have to admit it. So total corporate expenses going from $815 to $914. That's about a $100,000 increase. So total operating expenses going from $11,600,000 to $11,800,000. It's a difference of 175 or 1.5%. Okay, we're going to move a little bit into the capital plan and the capital budget. This is the Planning and Evaluation recommended and the Fiscal Affairs Committee amended capital budget. We're going to talk a little bit about the pool here. I'm going to pull all these up since they're somewhat out of order. So funds for the Abrego South Pool Replacement Project were recommended for removal by the Fiscal Affairs Committee from the original staff recommendation and the P&E recommendation. And what that looks like is our Maintenance, Repair, and Replacement Fund, MRRB, which is pools and spas, does have a fund balance of just over $1.6 million right now. Our original recommendation included funds for that replacement. The other thing that it included was $750,000 from the Initiatives Fund, and this is for the Abrego South locker room and the shower room. And this resulted in a decrease of expenditures of $250,000 in 26 and $500,000 in 27. Now, we think both of these numbers, if the pool actually does get built at some point, we're hopeful that these would be the maximum. We're doing just rough estimates, and we think that if in fact that is replaced at some point, whether this year, another year, or ever, in today's dollars, it would be about $200,000. And then it was recommended that we include some money in the budget, $100,000 for 26 for demolition of the pool and their locker room. Either way, the pool and the locker room will need to be demolished. We did have a soils engineer inspect the property and take soil samples, core samples, under the pool deck and in a few areas. And it's evident, based on what we've been told by them and read, in 74, when this pool was built, the compaction for that property was not adequate. And so, how many years is that? 50 years later, my goodness, we're seeing that pool start to compact a little bit and sink in a little bit. As is common with pools of that age where compaction wasn't appropriate or adequate, we have seen and they have seen where infrastructure from plumbing has leaked because of shifting soils. And so we have seen leaks there, and we've repaired them as soon as we have found them. But the leaking did not help the subsidence of the pool, as you can imagine. So the recommendation is if that property is going to be rebuilt with a pool or any type of building in the future, that the soils all need to be removed and replaced with 7.5 feet minimum of engineered soil, which is a lot of money. It's significant. So if anything is going to be rebuilt, we definitely need to take into consideration the soils and then, of course, the cost of the pool and then certainly the cost of the building. With that funding off of the capital project, at least at this time, there was a recommendation to move up the West Center wood shop and woodworking facility expansion project from the 3-year period of 2027 through 29 to an earlier period of 26 through 28. That project remains at an estimated 1.2 million. So essentially what that means, if the project for the pool doesn't move forward in 26 or 27, that means funding is available for the wood shop project to move forward a year sooner. We're going to continue talking about that a little bit more. Yeah, let's move forward. And the other thing that the P&E recommended and the FAC amended was the non-reserve capital budget for 26 was revised by the Fiscal Affairs Committee to include $200,000 to $20,000 for ADA project improvements. We've just completed an ADA project report. Most of our facilities are looking pretty good for those that have some mobility challenges, but there are some recommendations, and this 20,000 will help move forward with implementing those recommendations. So that was the budget for capital projects. This is the capital 5-year plan. And this is specifically the initiatives fund. You can see here we've got 5 years starting January 1 of 2026. We show a beginning fund balance followed by funding from operations. This funding from operations is the 20% that comes from the member change fee and 25% that comes from the initial fee. And we can see investment earnings under here, and then we see total revenue earned for the year. We've gone through some of these projects, but I'm going to go through some of these again. Actually, I don't think we have. Parking lot note. This is a 10-year note that GVR, the board, agreed to several years ago. This was to purchase the parking lot from the GVR Foundation at the Del Sol Clubhouse. It's a 10-year note at $11,000 a year. West Center lobby improvement projects. This was budgeted last year at $150,000. This would, this would remodel the lobby so that we could move our membership services and customer service staff into what is now the box office and utilize the front area for our customer service desks. There's more parking. It's a one-stop shop. We felt that it was a better introduction for new members to come to this great center than down to our administrative offices, which is pretty small. This is a nice introduction. We have the artisan shop across the way. We've got the wood shop across the way. We've got a swimming pool. We've got this beautiful auditorium, a nice courtyard, and a beautiful view of the mountains. I think it's a beautiful introduction to Green Valley and to Tucson. So, to GVR. The other thing is once we consolidate our staff into one location, we believe there's an opportunity to eliminate one FTE because we'll be cross-trained and have our staff in one location. So there's an efficiency piece that is a part of this. When we bid this out last year, our bid came in at $162,000. At the same time, we received a bid for the expansion of the metal arts shop, which came in significantly higher. So we wanted to recommend and make sure the metal arts shop project moved forward. So we recommended delaying the West Center lobby improvements. And so that's what we did. That $150,000 was never spent. So what we've included here is the minimum bid that we received, which was $162,000. We added a 10% contingency just to make sure. And then we added a little bit more for some millwork and some storage. So that's why we go from $150,000 to $190,000. The $100,000 under that is the Las Campanas fitness expansion to the Cypress Room. We've talked some time and know that the Las Campanas fitness room is one of our busiest fitness centers. I think it's the second busiest. And it's pretty compact. The equipment in there is pretty tight and it's becoming busier and busier. So this project would expand into the room next door, which is the Cypress Room, which currently is a studio for fitness classes, and we would simply relocate those classes to a different facility. This West Center Club expansion project, I think are there some lapidary people here? No? Okay. So this has been budgeted and worked on. The architect is completing drawings by about 100% at this point. That should be finished within the next few weeks. They're expecting construction of that project to start in January of this next year. This 634 isn't the full picture. It's closer to 900,034. We just anticipated spending about 300,000 of that in 25. I don't think that's going to happen. So what we're going to have to do by the next time we bring this back to you is add that 300 that wasn't spent in 25 and roll it over into 26. So we're going to add that to 26. Thank you. And then you can see here, this highlighted portion is the club expansion for the wood shop. This highlighted portion shows that that project has been moved up 1 year. And that's if, in fact, the South of Brago pool and locker room aren't rebuilt. This shows a tennis court expansion at Las Campanas in 2030. This shows a Santa Rita Art League lower level expansion in 2030. You can see here where the Abrego South Locker Room building was removed from initiatives for this, and the $100,000 for demolition was added. The pickleball court fencing was recommended. Now, staff first recommended this at 40,000. We've bumped that up to 50,000 just to make sure we have enough fencing. But when that pickleball center was built, there wasn't fencing included in the original bid because of costs. But what we're finding is we have a lot of problems with non-members coming to that center and using the facilities because there are gates throughout the pickleball center where non-members or members can come in from any direction. And what this would do is what we should have done back when it was opened is have a fence basically surrounding the entire facility and then funneling all the members and guests into a front location so that they have to swipe their card in order to get in. It should have happened back then. It didn't. We know this is a big problem now that we would like to correct. So we are recommending that this stay in the capital budget for 26. And then finally, Bart, this one's for you. This is $40,000 to expand the Santa Rita Springs Fitness Center expand project. This would take out the corner office, which the current RSA utilizes. This would remove that office and allow that fitness center to expand into that corner office. You can see the total expenditure anticipated for 26 would be just over $1.2 million. So a lot of projects that we would anticipate this year. As you know, if you've been paying attention the last few years, we've been very busy getting projects done. You can see once this wood shop project is completed, and if the locker room and the Brago pool project are added back in,
Did everybody freeze?
We lost.
You disappeared. Oh, there you're back now.
Okay.
You're back now.
all right, you're back. Welcome.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Now I got to start over from the beginning.
No.
No,
All right, have you been tracking? Do I need to follow up on anything?
No, we just
No,
missed
you were-
about 15 seconds.
Okay, all right, well, good. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Abrego South locker room and the pool. I realize this is a big decision, and I want to clarify that if money, for whatever reason, if the board decides to put the money back in for the budget, that really just is a placeholder for funds. This isn't a decision on whether or not the pool or the locker room would be rebuilt. That's a different discussion. This is just about the budget and are we allocating funds or aren't we allocating funds? Even if this doesn't include funds for the locker room and the pool. It doesn't mean at some point that the board couldn't amend its budget and put funds back in the budget. So whatever happens now isn't necessarily a done deal, or on the 22nd when it's approved. The board does have the ability to amend its budget. And again, if money is in the budget, it doesn't mean it has to be spent. In fact, we originally put it in there just to make sure that the board and all the decision makers have enough time and opportunity to make sure that you have performed your due diligence on this very difficult decision. The Fiscal Affairs Committee, and I'll just try to, I'm not going to speak for Nellie. If she wants to speak, she can speak, felt that from a financial perspective, the decision was pretty clear that Abrego South is one of the least utilized pools out of all of our pools, that we currently, or we will have after this next year, just over $442,000 in our pool fund. Well, that's just for the transfer for the next year. So we'll have a little bit over 2 million next year. But we can also expend $1.5 million very easily on replacing a pool. So if we did expend that next year on Abrego South, which is a real possibility, that means our fund balance obviously drops significantly. And we have to build that up or find other means to find funding if another pool fails. So it was a financial discussion and a financial decision about the cost benefit of, does it make sense to budget and spend $2 to $2.5 million on a facility that shows that it is the least utilized of all of our pools. Pardon? Hold on. You're going to comment at the end of the meeting. You have plenty of opportunity. I'm telling you how it happened. We're the messenger here. This is how it happened. Okay? All right. That's how it happened. So that's the story. Again, if funds are included, there's no guarantee that this pool is going to be built. The way we did the East Center pool, when that was built, there were funds in the budget. We were able to have some discussions with the community that uses the pool. The Aquabells were involved since that's their pool, and they needed a deep pool. So that pool was specifically built to accommodate them, and that's why it's 8.5 feet deep. We had a couple discussions, town hall type meetings with the members, and came up with some good plans to figure out how to move forward with that pool. Now, I will say that pool is, gosh, I think the third or fourth busiest pool. So it was an easier decision because it was a fully utilized pool. Nevertheless, I think that is the thinking of the Fiscal Affairs Committee. If the chair of the committee wants to say a few more words on that, this would be a good opportunity. And if not, hopefully I've covered it.
Thank you. This decision was a very difficult decision for the FAC committee. It was not made in isolation of just looking at Abrego South, but it goes back almost a year of looking at the adequacy of our reserves in total, both for our facilities and for our pools. And we did a special presentation that the board looked at in February of this year. And we looked at our Browning study that did the facilities estimate, and we know our expenses are going up by 7.7% this year, and another between 6 and 7% going into the next 5 years. So we have an obligation to ensure that that fund is adequately funded, and it is. It meets it. It's very close to our criteria for what's called replacement funds. We exceed that. And our other target is, from a fully funded balance standpoint, we are moving towards our goal of 70%. And if you're all part of HOAs, you understand the importance of the reserves being funded. When we looked at the pool fund was only established in 2021. We have a special report that's done by staff, and we had a pool study that was done. That's posted on the website underneath the reserve study. It's worth looking at because you can see our pools are aging out. The life expectancy of a pool is 35 years. 7 of our pools are over that amount. So we have aging pools in our entire 13 pools that are there. And so we really have to be careful when we are looking at expending funds, because another pool like Desert Hills was a possibility last year, and we were going to run into situations. When we look at the adequacy of where our targets are for our pool reserve, our target is at 70%, and we're only at 34%. More importantly, when we look at replacement, our target is 25%, and we're at 11%. So we are not adequately funded to support our 13 pools, and we recognize that and are putting in 7% and are looking for additional dollars to the extent that they're available to build up the fund. So under those circumstances, when you look at the replacement of Abrego South at a total of $2.4 million, we thought that investment was contrary to looking at where our reserves were in the pool, and that we needed to look at alternative uses for that space, of which staff would be exploring that in 2026. And so those were the decisions under consideration when we looked at it over the past 6 months.
Thank you. Okay, this is a capital P&E recommended and FAC amended 5-year plan continued. We've talked about MRRB down here just now. You can see Abrego South. This was where the 1.6 was. This has been removed. So basically the ending balance just continues. And then you can see where this ending balance becomes the beginning fund balance for the next year, and so on and so forth, until we have to actually spend money on a pool. And again, that may be Abrego South. I want to move up here to MRRA, which is maintenance, repair, and replacement of our facilities. The reserve study, which we just talked about, the reserve study here recommends that we expend roughly $2.2 million in 2026. We've gone through the draft, staff has, and are recommending an additional $300,000 of work needs to be done in 2026. So our recommendation is to make sure that we include that 2.5 in anticipated expenditures out of MRRA. I do want to go back up here to the annual funding per the reserve study. Let's see, where is that mouse of mine? Right here. For 2026, the recommendation is that we transfer in $1.4 million. Now that's coming from operations. It comes from operations to MRRA. That's $1.4 million for 26. For 25, or I'm sorry, for 27, that goes up another $100,000. And every year, $100,000. So by the time we get to 2030, the recommendation is $1.8 million. That's a lot. And that's a big hit on our operations account. And we're going to show you how that impacts our operations account. This down here on the bottom is our emergency fund. You know, it kind of remains to be seen on what an emergency is. We like to look at it as a contingency account. In the past, the board has recommended transferring any investment earnings over $500,000, and our recommendation is to leave them there until and if a project is identified, because the emergency account isn't as liquid. It's invested at a different rate, and so the earnings there are much higher. So we're recommending leaving them there until if and when a project is identified, which could be a pool. All right, a little bit more on MRR. I want to drive it home because the increases to funding are significant. And those have really happened because we are maintaining our facilities. As we've said, our pools are older, but that's a different fund. But all of these facilities were built in mostly the 70s and 80s. GVR didn't build any of these facilities. We accepted the facilities and said that we would maintain and repair them over time. And a lot of them are aging out. It's very expensive to maintain a 50-year-old facility. And as I said, annual expenditures for this fund are increasing. I'm sorry, annual contributions are increasing by $100,000 annually. So by the time we get to 2030, they're up to 1.8 million, whereas in 26 they're 1.4. So here is the Fiscal Affairs Committee recommended total budget. The very first column, and you can see this as a comparison here. We've got the original budget presented by staff, which is right here. Then we had the iteration, which was the Fiscal Affairs Committee recommendations. And then we had some staff revisions, which were based on the decrease in wages. That's the third column. We're mostly looking at the third column right now. We've talked about the initiatives fund, which is all this. That total for the initiatives is 1.2 million. FAC added 20,000 for non-reserve capital. Abrego South, this 1.6 was removed from the FAC recommendations here, which shows, and then we've got the 2 point, my cursor keeps leaving. The MRRA is 2.5 million, which shows a grand total for capital projects of 3.8 million in 26, coupled with the 2026 operating budget of 11.8 million. That provides a grand total for the 2026 budgets of $15,637,000. It's a lot. Okay. Now I think we need to have a discussion. What I'm going to recommend, because I think this is a huge decision point for the operating budget. The second decision point will probably be the Abrego South discussion. Do you keep money in or do you keep it out? But the first discussion, I would encourage the board to talk about the member change fee refunds, because if the refund stays in the budget, that's going to affect dues. If it comes out of the budget, that's going to affect dues. So we really need to find out where the board is at in terms of your appetite for removing and eliminating refunds or keeping refunds as they are. We have some data here that we want to be able to provide. And this shows that this first year, again, remember, was a mid-year implementation, which would generate about $150,000 in revenue. But in subsequent years, it would be $300,000. And just to put that into perspective, the equivalent of $300,000 per year is $22 in dues increases. So in other words, if you find that $300,000 by eliminating the refunds, in future years, you won't have to raise dues $22 each year, which is significant. So that's one of the reasons this is a difficult discussion and decision point. So a straw poll isn't an official vote. This is a work session. You can't take an official vote, but we do need to get the pulse of the board on where you're at so that we can adjust dues accordingly. And depending on what decision or discussion, rather, you have today, we have an option that we want to be able to show you, and we're calling it Plan B. But we first want to be able to have the discussion on how you feel about the member change fee refunds. So with that, I think I'm going to open it up and turn it over to the president. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. A lot of information, a lot of decisions will have to be made. However, again, they're talking about doing a straw poll on maybe a couple of things today, because at a work session, we do not vote for one thing or the other. That is done at a regular session of the board. So this meeting today is for discussion purposes. And we start with the board members first, and then we go to the members at the end before we go on to another subject. So with that, I can see a hand up. I just can't see who's behind it. Lanny, go ahead and you.
No, this is still the.
I have sorry.
Go ahead, Lanny.
Okay. I just have a clarifying question from maybe from Nellie, and it was at the very beginning of your presentation, Nellie. were you recommending with regard to the member change fee, the $177,000 that we would be additional revenue that we would receive this year? Were you recommending that that money be transferred to MRRB?
No,
Did I hear that?
no,
Okay, that's what I thought.
it was part of the total revenue package that was needed to balance out managing the dues increase. So it's on the operations side. So it wasn't tied directly to the 7% pool or the 7.7% M&R increase. Overall, you had the pressure points from all of those areas,
Right.
which dictated that you needed another revenue source.
And the wage
Okay.
increase was the 177. The
Or, okay, yeah,
elimination
I'm
of the
sorry.
member change fee refunds was 150 for 26.
Right, so
And that's just operations.
Right, it was such a long time ago. You're right, Scott. It was the $177,000 in wage savings. Was that what you were recommending be transferred to MRRD? Because there was, you mentioned something about transferring savings to MRRB. That was about an hour ago.
I think
Sorry,
when you, Madam Chair, when you look at page 5 in the meeting book, in our discussions, we looked at the member dues going up to the 2.8%.
right,
And because that's the 50% of the Social Security, and that's a
Right.
reasonable dues increase. With that, if you accepted that at 2.8% versus dropping it down to 1.5%, that would be with this wage increase, you had the opportunity to put more money into the pool fund. But that wasn't
That's what I thought I heard.
the information that we had. We didn't have that opportunity to dialogue that, but you have that opportunity to look at it. A 1.5% dues increase, considering all the other expenditures, to me is a bit problematic.
right, okay. So I did hear you correctly that that opportunity would be there to take that wage savings to put in MRRB. I did hear you correctly.
It's an opportunity, correct?
Okay. So with that, my comment to that is okay, that's an opportunity. It's an idea. If that were the case, would we not be should we not maintain the dues at 545? Why would we reduce them to 538?
Correct.
And I understand the logic behind it, but again, that gap would continue that you showed us in that graph, Scott, MCF and or the dues to the COLA formula would continue to widen if we dropped it to 538, as opposed to the opportunity that Nellie identified with the wages, but keep the fees, the member fees at 545. So I know it's not talking about the change fee, it's more a clarification question and just a thought that I'm throwing out there.
That's good.
Yeah, Laney, I would like to offer the decrease in the dues went from 545 to, again, 538, only because of the decrease in anticipated wages. Certainly, the board could keep it at 545 and take any additional revenue and transfer that from operations over into the pools and spas fund,
Okay.
if that's what the
Okay,
board
thank
chooses
you.
to do.
Okay, thank you. It's just a clarification point. Thank you.
Beth?
So it seemed to me on the membership change fees that you're either asking a few people to make up this 300,000 or everybody to spread it out. And so it would seem to me that if you'd have a few people, you'll have fewer complaints than if you spread it out over everybody and increase the dues beyond $22 beyond the 545. So, I mean, I think it's a hard one to figure out, but it would seem that maybe people don't, I mean, why would you even expect that you wouldn't get, you would get the money back when you, because as we say, when you buy a new house, you pay this amount of money. So I guess I would say we should probably just go ahead and eliminate the membership change fee, although I do know that'll be a hit for some portion of the people, but changing houses. And I don't know, do we have any numbers on about how many people buy a new house within Green Valley?
You know, that goes to the FAC. David provides
I think
a
that's about 17
spreadsheet
or
every
18
month.
houses.
Excuse me.
I think
Every
it's about
month.
17 or 18.
Go ahead. Anyway, I was going to say the spreadsheet that David provides to FAC every month shows how many people, how many homes are sold, a number of other things, and at the bottom it shows how many people are refunded. Over the past years, I did a graph a while back ago, and it's an average of 95 to 100 people per year. Scott provided in this meeting book a study that they went back to 2011, which was as far as they had records for it. Nobody, I don't think anybody here is employed prior to, or even back at 2011, much less prior to that. So they could only go back to 2011. And during that period of time, which is what, 14 years, this has taken place every year. So we have been doing refunds every single year for these people. If you go to page 8 and you look at, and this is not a ding on anybody, any other board or a current board or anything else, but if you go to page 8 and you see the difference of if we had followed all those years, the CPM and the COLA, where we are at $530 this year, it should have been $700 if they had followed that COLA every single year, but they didn't. There were a number of years that this board was able to have a very large surplus that they could put back into programs or operations, whatever they determined at that time. However, in looking at the people who are receiving refunds, and we don't really delve into it, and I have no data to support what I have to say, but I believe that many of these people who are getting refunds for transferring their primary home from one home to another are a lot of the people who have lost a spouse and are downsizing. We get 100 of them a year. That's reasonable to understand that 100 people die over a year, and many of those people are downsizing to save money or be able to live at a much lesser expense for a larger home, whatever the cost is. But it seems to me we need to recognize the fact that these people, all of them, over all these years, have paid the original fee when they came in. They paid the member change fee. There have been different names for for this member change fee over the years, but every one of us has paid that. And if we transfer to another home, it seems to me they should not have to pay a second time to stay in GVR. They've already paid that amount, whatever it was when they moved here. Maybe it was a year ago, because there is a requirement that you have to stay in your home for a year. Maybe it was a year ago, maybe it was 10 years ago, but all of these people have paid what was required of them at the time. And at the time, if they moved even way back in 2011 or prior to that, they were able to get a refund. And now we're talking about changing that, taking that away from them. I have to say, in my own opinion, I think this is a bigger issue to raise dues for everybody, not to subject a small group of people to have to make up those funds for GVR. Anybody else? Bev?
I'm going to agree with you. I haven't decided yet to downsize or upsize,
But if I found out that the money that I paid initially wasn't going to be refunded and I was going to have to pay it again, I would be very upset. My thing on dues isn't so much with the member change fee, it's with our current dues. As you can see on the chart, the chart that they gave us before the graph, we are way behind in paying dues from where we should be, because there were several years where they didn't raise dues at all, and or maybe raised them $5 instead of even $10 or something. And we are way behind. And if you don't want to increase greater than what we're doing right now, in 2026, you're talking about a 1.9% increase. And in 2027, you're talking about a 3.5% increase. And if you add the 4 years together, you come up with a 9.7% increase. I think if you want to stay that low, it should at least be equal. I think people are going to say, okay, they went up $10 this year, but next year it's going to be 20 or 25 or whatever. People are going to scream. So I'd rather see it even. But I think we should go up by 3 or 4% at least to catch up to where we should be. So we are not, none of us have a crystal ball, but we aren't expecting housing sales to increase anytime soon. And we need to start paying it out of pocket, I'm afraid, to catch up to where we need to be so that we can meet our expenses and so that we can replace pools when they need it. Instead of saying, okay, you don't get this facility, but you get this one. I know we can't give everybody everything all the time, but if we don't replace the breakup pool and another pool fails, you know, they're going to say, okay, let's replace Canoas. Well, how come Abraco didn't get their pool? That doesn't seem fair to me. And I think we need to look at that. Obviously, the structural issues at Abraco need to be of top concern, but I think we need to start raising dues where they should be.
Right.
So based on what Bevis said, please let's not talk about the pool right now. We're talking about the member change fee. And I can't see Marge, but Scott tells me, Marge, you have your hand up. Could we have you speak?
No, Jody.
I guess not. Okay, Jody.
Okay, so I am dead set against removing the change fee refund. I think it's a money grab. You're slapping the members that paid this membership fee in the face and going to ding them again for another $3,100 or $3,200. This is a membership fee. They are a member currently. Just because they change households, we shouldn't be dinging them again for another $3,200. If we don't have enough money, at some point, when do we say enough is enough? And we start out and say, we don't have any money in the budget. We need to back off on any increases of spending money and just bring things back into line. I'm new to this, so forgive me if I am, it just doesn't work that way. But at some point in time, we have to start working within a budget. I am for increases in the members' dues. Do I believe we need to get up in the $700-800 range a year? No. Here in the Midwest, we would never pay that much money. I realize it's Arizona, but at the same time, you have to take into consideration the whole membership, the entire membership at the same time. And additionally, I do have a question. And if this is the wrong time to ask, I'm going to ask it and maybe we can get the answer later. Where are we on housing sales? How were they for September? Were we above? And if so, how much above? And what's it tracking for August? That's it.
Okay, year to date through September, we are above budget. And
By how many?
by about 26 homes out of 600 budgeted. We have 830 some for the year. And I believe we will come in at or above, but I don't ask me to guarantee it.
Okay, and what do we have? Do we have any projected so far and been informed on sales for October?
I don't. I didn't
Okay.
look. It's just so early in the month.
Sure. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate it, David.
No problem. Good question.
Okay, Marge, I see you're back.
Yeah, if I don't get kicked out again. I think Kathy, I think this is a question. I don't think we should eliminate the membership change fee. I think we should raise the dues to cover whatever it is we would get if we did reduce it. I don't know if we can, only Scott and David would know. But I think that's a more equitable amount than to punish people who want to move to smaller units or bigger units. But then the other side of that is, I don't think we can take the pool out of the budget today. I think that there's, in the bylaws, there's a section, 3 that says that we cannot reduce the standard of service to the recreational facility. I don't want to be on a board that's going to decide, oh, well, we'll just take it off. I think if you're.
Okay, Marge, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're not talking about the pool right now. We're only discussing the member change fee.
Well, I'm throwing it all together because I'm going to have to go. So I wanted to get all my 2 cents in while I could. So I'll send you an email, I guess, if you don't want to hear from me.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Marge. Beth?
I really agree that we need to raise the dues and not just a tiny amount. I mean, whenever I talk to people, outside of here, back home, you tell them it costs $530 a year and they just about faint. They're like, that is so cheap. And we have gotten off so amazingly well over these years. When you think about what we get for if there's 2 of us, $250 some a year for all these facilities. So I think we shouldn't be too shy about raising the dues and saying, you're getting such a good deal. And I know over the years that, board members have been very, like, well, we can only go up a little way. That, I really think we need to sell the fact that people are getting a huge amount for their money and they shouldn't be too unhappy about paying a little more or even a lot more.
Okay. Bev?
I just talked to my son recently who lives in a suburb of North Chicago, not anywhere near Chicago, really quite a ways out. But he recently told me he is switching fitness centers because the one he went to is no longer allowing his company, his employer discount. And they were going to charge I believe he was looking at Snap Fitness, or that's the one he was in. So he was going to switch to a different one. $160 a month for a very, very basic plain Jane fitness center, no frills whatsoever, $160 a month. Now, if you multiply that times 12, that is way more than what we pay for 10 times the amount of services that we have in facilities. So I think we have a good deal.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this on the board, please, at this time? Candy?
I agree with the discussion that I personally do not want to eliminate the membership change fee refund, because I do agree that when we all moved here and we had to pay the $3,000 or $3,100 or whatever it was, that many of us, the reasons why we may have to buy another resident is because, like Kathy was saying, about either a spouse passing, and then you lose that Social Security and you have a real cut to your income. So then to have to pay again when you're already losing money because you need to move or you need to downsize. Now, maybe we could add something like, if you want to get a bigger house and it costs more than the house that you're selling, then maybe you can pay the other $3,200 or whatever. But I think for the most part, at least the friends I know in my neighborhood, they have to relocate because of their income has changed and not for the better. So I am not in for eliminating what am I voting for again? I keep saying it the wrong thing. The refund, keeping the refund. And that would also, I agree with, we're going to have to raise membership dues. I'm sorry, everybody. But I agree with Bev. I mean, I'm from Atlanta. My Atlanta Athletic Club cost me and my husband like $200 a month. And all it had a nice pool. It had great tennis courts and great fitness centers, but it had nothing like we have here. We are so blessed to have what we have here. So that's how I feel.
Scott?
Well, thank you all for your comments. I am hearing that most are not supportive at this time of eliminating the refunds. And so we have a plan B that we're going to propose and talk about, but I think first we should go into the second discussion, if that's all right with everyone, and talk about if funds should stay in the capital budget to replace the Abrego pool and locker room, or not. Now, I just want to remind everyone, if funds aren't added, it doesn't mean it's not a done deal, but I would have to say it's probably not as likely as if funds were in. I think if anything, allowing funds or putting funds back in would give the board the opportunity to make sure that you're comfortable with whatever decision you make. So,
Before we go on to that, Scott, if
Sure.
you don't mind,
Yeah.
would like to know if anybody in the audience would like to address the member change fee refunds only. We're not talking about the pool yet, but just on the discussion we just had on the member change refunds. Okay, not seeing any. Go ahead, Scott.
All right. Well, I think the discussion then is just going to move into whether or not there's interest in putting funds in the budget to replace the pool and the locker room, or to keep funds out of the budget to replace the locker room. And remember, if the funds are removed or kept out, then that would allow the wood shop expansion project to move up 1 year. And if they aren't included, or if they are included, then that would push and delay the the wood shop expansion project 1 year.
So are we talking just the locker room? And I think there's some restrooms that go with that?
It's the pool, which is
It includes.
this is a discussion on the whole project. So this would be replacing the pool, the spa, and the locker room and shower. And again, it's not replacing it, but whether or not to include funds in this next year's budget to do that.
Who would like to start that discussion? Beth?
So you're asking us to decide between the wood shop and the pool?
Well, again, you're not deciding on which project, but it's whether or not you're going to include funds or not. The wood shop project, I expect, is going to move forward, but it would just be delayed another year if you keep funds in for the pool.
Because we already have the wood shop in our programming in the 5-year plan, but it's not intended to start with their agreement, by the way, until next year. So it really is not a replacement. They get to move up if we do not, but they are, in their mind, they're not really going to start until next year. So personally, I don't think the wood shop is a big discussion on this, because they're already planned for in the future. Where the pool is going to be a very big decision.
It is. And you've got.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Jody?
Yeah, forgive me, but I think in order to make a decision here, is it correct that if we don't go forward with the pool, that has to be a vote by the membership? Is that correct?
No, it is not.
Okay, so it's not a reduction of more than 5% of the total operating budget.
The bylaws talks about the operating budget. We're talking about the capital budget. 5% of the operating budget is $575,000. And it says if there's a service increase or a service reduction of 5%, then it has to go for a vote of the people.
Right.
Or a vote of the membership.
But if you don't replace the pool at a cost of 1.6 or whatever the total would be, isn't that over that 5%?
No, that's a different budget. That's the difference. One is an operating budget, and it specifically says the operating budget. The others.
Okay, but this is still a service that we offer And I think there might be a little bit ambiguous here, or we're gonna need legal to decide, because the way I read that, and I read a lot of regulation, is I agree that that would be a vote of the membership, because we are going to reduce services more than 5% of the operating budget.
Not
And
from
that's
the
just,
operating budget though, Jody.
it's
It's from
just,
the
it's,
MRR.
I understand, but you're talking about a service, and you're talking about it's the way that that bylaw is written.
That's
Is
right.
the reason, right, is the reason why. It's still a service. Do we not agree? The pool is a service, correct?
The way the bylaws are written, it specifies operating budget. If it
I
didn't specify operating budget, then we could look at that and we would
Okay.
probably have to go for a vote. But I think maybe we have even members of the board, I guess they're going to disagree on this, but the way I read it, it says it is very specific operating budget.
Okay, I understand,
Not
but
MR&R reserve.
right, but is the pool not a service? It is a service that we provide to our membership.
It's not the operating.
I think we're getting wrapped around the axle on this a little bit,
Okay.
Director Walker. I think if the
Okay.
board, regardless of what the policy says, if the board chooses to go to a vote of the membership on this, the board could certainly do that.
Okay,
If
okay,
the
then,
bylaws doesn't require it, and I don't think it does, but I haven't gone to the attorney for an opinion, but I think I
Right.
will.
okay.
Um,
Okay, then I guess my point is, until we make the decision one way or the other, whether it's a vote by the membership or just the directors, I think we need to put it back in the budget. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, any other,
Just one last comment on this, because the question that comes up in my mind is, what more are we going to know in 3 months in looking at this? We know the status of our pool overall, status of the aging pools that we have. And in 3 months, what more do we know? What we know now is this pool cost us 2.6 million to do. And while the funds may be there for this one, if another one goes down, we're into a special assessment. And that just is not a prudent thing to be looking at. So to me, it's not an issue of just a Brago. It's an issue of looking at the overall pools and what can be funded. So my question is, what more are you going to know in 3 months or 4 months? Because the data is pretty clear.
Bev, did you have go ahead.
My concern, one of my concerns about the pool, and I do think it should be replaced if it's feasible and realistic, engineering wise, to replace it. I know they have said we need 7.5 feet of specially engineered soils compacted properly, but I'm wondering if, and maybe they addressed it in their report, is if that particular area, if the soil and everything is so bad, is if we're going to run into the same problem. And yes, this pool did last us 50 years, kind of, except it's had multiple problems for many years, apparently. And so maybe, 7.5 feet of engineering soil will work and maybe it won't. But I do think we should leave the money in. And what Nellie just said, well, if another pool goes down, then what? Then we need a special assessment. Well, is it fair to say fix that pool and not fix South of Braco? That doesn't seem fair to me. But my big thing is, if we can make that pool last another 30, 50 years, if we replace it. And so I would like to see the money in the budget. Wood shop, and I'm for a wood shop. My husband spends a lot of time there. They still have a wood shop. They're not going without a wood shop. They can wait another year for an expansion, and I'm all for the expansion. But I think and if, like Jody thought, I disagree with her reasoning on the CPM and the wording, but if we had to take it to a vote, GVR typically has very low voter turnout. And the only people, in my opinion, that are going to vote for the pool in South Abrego are the people that live on that side of town, and everybody else is going to vote no. So you really don't want this to go. I mean, I don't believe there's a reason for it to go to a vote, according to the CPM. But if we did, I think you would lose.
Okay. Steve? Hang on just a second. Bill.
So I think we would all like to replace the South Abrego pool. But we all have a fiduciary responsibility. And at this point in time, GVR does not have the $2.5 million to spend on a pool that attracts an average of 20 swipes per day. There's two other pools within 5 minutes, the East Center and Santa Rita Springs. We cannot make up for the past. We did not have a reserve over the past 30 years that would have planned for the replacement of this pool. It's unfortunate that we're in this situation today, but we have to make tough decisions. And just because we don't choose to replace the pool next year doesn't mean that we can't replace it in the future. All right. We are looking at a point in time, which is today, and we're dealing with the money that we have. And I agree, it's unfortunate.
I'm sorry, Beth.
Can I just say that looking at these numbers, I'm not sure that I fully, I'm not sure how good these numbers are. If you look at Desert Hills in July of 25, it said there was one person. And I mean, I just think that not everybody swipes, and I can speak for myself. When I go to play water volleyball, there are times when I have not swiped my card at the reader that's right in front of the pool. And so I do challenge to some extent the numbers that are given here in return as not really fully reflecting the number of people who actually are using the pool.
Hang on just 1 second. Lanny Scott would like to speak to that.
When we looked at those numbers and pulled them together, we looked at swipes getting in from the gates. So we actually didn't look at the swipes, the separate swipes where you have to swipe once you get in. That's correct. We looked at the gates. Well, Desert Hills, it was closed. That's why. So if you're looking at the numbers before then in May and June, those numbers are there. But Desert Hills is showing a decrease because we were closed all summer long. But yes, the swipes for Abrego South Pool were measured by gate access for that exact reason that you mentioned. When a lot of people walk in, they don't do an extra swipe.
Lanny?
Thank you, Kathy. I guess two things. I think the discussion that we're supposed to be having is whether or not we keep the dollars in the budget as a placeholder. We have the option as a board between now and next budget season, should we make that decision not to move forward, to move them out. So I don't see it as a big issue. I don't think we're making the decision today about Abrego South. I think the other thing is, with all the communications that we have made to members, even in the most recent e-blast, the communication about Abrego South has been the board has a lot of decision making to do with regard to Abrego South. With my member hat on, removing the funds earmarked for repair and replacement of the pool and putting in demolition kind of sends a signal that the board has already made a decision. And I don't think, as a board member, after having said for the last 3 or 4 months that we're still thinking about it, to kind of slip it into the budget. And I understand the reasons why. They're all very logical. But as a board member, I'm not terribly comfortable with that kind of a message. I think the message I prefer to send is one that was very well articulated in last Friday's e-blast, which is the board has a tough decision to make over the next couple of months. But in the meantime, we are going to put the money aside so that when we do make a decision, whatever decision it is that we have to make, and And it's not a black and white decision. It's a very multi-pronged decision. Because I think to Steve's earlier point, we're not only making a decision about Abrego, we're also kind of setting the tone for what future pool decisions may look like. So I think it's prudent for us as a board to put the funds for Abrego back into the budget. We know they're there. Whether it's too much or not enough, at least we have a placeholder. And from a brand perspective, from a board perspective, we're staying true to what we've been advertising for the last 3 months. We're going to think about it. The last thing I'd like to, and so you could put a placeholder if you want, a footnote, demolition, $100,000, fine. But to only have that one number in there sends, I'm simply not comfortable as a board member to have that after what we've been signaling for the last 3 months. So I vote to put the money back in. Let's take the time over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long it takes, to make a reasoned decision with a lot of information, because I certainly don't have enough information to make any kind of decision today. Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everyone's discussion and all the input. I think it's been very helpful. My sense is overall that the majority of the board are interested in keeping the funds in the budget in order to perform additional research or to perform whatever due diligence needs to happen. So unless I'm told otherwise, we will prepare an updated recommended budget that we will bring back to the board on the 22nd capital budget that includes those dollars. Will certainly include an option for the board to choose the alternative, which is to remove the money, which would then move up the wood shop. But right now I'm hearing that that's most of what the board members are saying.
Madam Chair, is that the way that we do that? I mean, don't we look at the, going into the budget discussions with the recommendations that we have from the FAC and staff? We don't have a vote here. And so I think that the budget should stay with the dollars out. And if somebody wants to recommend them coming back in again, then that should come from a board and we should have an absolute vote on it.
To me, we are not voting today to replace the pool or not. To me, we have a recommendation to take it out. However, it wasn't a unanimous. Maybe it was. Was it a unanimous vote?
It was
Nellie?
8-1.
It was what?
8-1.
8-1 to recommend not keeping the pool in the budget. I realize we're not taking a vote, but we're taking a straw vote as far as I can determine. And I think we ought to raise some hands to see what we want Scott to do so that we have a good feel for our board meeting in 2 weeks so that he knows what to prepare in the budget. Is that?
We can do that. Can I offer one other option? So the FAC recommendation hasn't changed. I agree 100. And in terms of protocol, that recommendation to the budget needs to stay. I think I was speaking more on behalf of the staff recommendation. Staff and the FAC don't always agree, and that's okay. In this case, I think it's important for me as your CEO to give you as a board the flexibility and the time to feel like you've done your due diligence and research this as much as you can, even if it takes 3 to 6 months. So my recommendation from my budget is going to include it. And that's okay. I think what we will provide to you as a board are 2 options for you to consider: the FAC recommendation on this topic or the staff recommendation on this topic. So that's what I would recommend, rather than doing the poll here, because I agree with Nellie. The FAC made a recommendation, and that needs to stay. The board can choose to not accept it, of course, and I don't necessarily, as the CEO, have to agree with it. So I'm going to recommend one thing in this case, and I think the FAC they've already made their recommendation. So Can we go that? Are you comfortable with that? Is everyone comfortable with that?
Is the rest of the board comfortable with that?
Yes.
So you're saying, Scott, you're going to present both FAC and then the staff one.
On this topic, yes.
Okay.
We will put that in the staff.
On the capital
report.
budget, on the capital
On the
budget.
capital budget, right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you want to hear?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but hang on just a second. We do want to hear from the audience, but sir, if you'll hold on just a moment. A lady wrote a letter with regards to the pool. Her name is Judy Hensley, I believe. She is the Desert Meadows Townhouses president and a committee member, and she would like this letter to be read. Unfortunately, my eyes is not as great as they used to be. So Scott, if you don't mind, would you mind reading that letter, and then we'll open it up to the members to speak.
To the South Abrego Pool Committee.
You're not turned on.
Oh.
So-
To the South Abrego Pool Committee, location, location, location. There will be no pool from the East Center to the Springs on Abrego for at least 10 HOAs. The economic impact to GVR and homeowners is priceless. People bought their homes in this area because of the walking distance to the South Abrego Pool in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and it will be a draw for many future sales. It is the best facility for volleyball. I was expecting applause. We don't need a deep pool. No new redesign. Replace it as it is. The hot tub is unique in its depth for many people. Abrego South has been our home pool since we moved to Green Valley 5 years ago. It has become my home for exercising and something. We have made so many friends at the pool. We had our 50th wedding anniversary party there. Every third Friday of the month, we have a potluck party, which is well attended. Since the pool has been closed, everyone has scattered to other pools. We have lost that commemorating, maybe it's camaraderie with many friends. If the pool is not replaced, it would be like losing an old friend. Respectfully submitted, Desert Townhome President and Committee Member. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we understand there are people in the audience that would like to speak to it, so this is your chance. If you will come up and give us your name and your GVR number.
You people are great. I really appreciate everything you did. You made it so we could understand it, the simple people like me and stuff like that. And you know what? I had a lot of questions about the bylaws and all that. But between Marge down here, I say down here because that's where I seen her from, and you, I appreciate it so much that, you know what? I think you're doing the fair thing, and I think you're going to let us know when we have a meeting and stuff like that. And you know what? That's all I can ask for. I want a fair shot at this. And that happens to be my president. And I'm like the vice president to him, who you got the letter and stuff like that. So that calmed me down. I mean, I apologize. I got a New York attitude, but I think you guys did really, really good. I appreciate it. And I'm willing to work with you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak to it?
My name is Rick Browning. Live at 1622 South San Luis. I am in walking distance of the South Abrego Pool. That is the reason.
Excuse me, could you get a little closer to the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's the reason I go to the pools. I can walk to it. I've been to 2 or 3 other pools in the 14 years I've owned a house here. Now is to explore. I really wish it expanded. I'd love to have a physical fitness thing, et cetera, in the South Abrego Pool. Probably not realistic, but I am a firm believer it should be returned to the budget and at least considered. It's well used. There's a lot of people down there will not go to another pool because any other pool I got to drive to. It's a headache, a hassle, and an inconvenience. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else in the audience?
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Vadnais, and I'm with I'm president of the volleyball club. And I could talk up here for a half an hour, I think, but there's a few things that I would like to discuss. And number one, I believe it was Steve that said that he got the impression that a lot of people on the board had already made up their mind that the pool was going to go. And I have to agree with that, because when we were moved to North, and we have a history with North. North is not conducive to volleyball at all. And the first thing that happened when we got there, several of us got together and we said, we're going to end up here if we're not careful, and this is going to be our permanent home from now on. And I have to say that I have to thank Steve and some other people for listening to us and helping us out and moving us to CP2, even though we have not moved there yet, but we're getting close. And there again, I still do not want to be there permanently if we can help it. And I would like to go back to South. However, what's conducive to us is we need to have a 4 foot pool or depth at most, because we have people that are very short, and we love the game. But the other thing that we need to do is we need to have the ability to grow our club. We do not have that ability, and we have not had that ability to grow our club. And part of the reason is because whenever South goes down, we went to North. And way back when, I was told that they were at is it Madeira Vista? Well, we were playing there, and the pool is shallow enough for us to play. However, we had the hot tub went out into the middle of the pool. Well, that's not conducive to safety. So then we ended up going over to North. They said, well, we're going to rebuild the North. And we weren't taken into consideration there, and it's too narrow, it's too deep. And that we were never asked about East, as far as I know. And so I think if we think out of the box, we have the ability to increase our membership. On our club, we have the ability to take more hours. At this particular time, we only have 8 hours a week that we can play volleyball. There's 150 hours that other people can swim and do other things. We don't have that ability. And if we have more time, if we have something that's a little more conducive to our club, we can increase the membership of where we're playing, and more people will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
I won't be as long-winded as Dennis. My name is Beth Pearl. I'm the secretary and treasurer of the GVR Volleyball Club. And I did, again, want to shout out to Steve. Thank you so much for giving us a new home, at least temporarily. And one thing I did want to mention, our club has about 120, 130 members. Not everybody plays at every option that we have, but we encompass water volleyball, court, and sand. One of the great things about the South of Brago is that the sand court is right next door. And so one of our concerns is if that pool is no longer usable, our sand numbers are going to drop off, because people like the convenience of being able to play a couple hours of sand and then running right across and playing a couple hours of water. So that is one consideration. I totally get the fiscal responsibility aspects of this and the concern that you've got a few pools that are aging. So I'm a pragmatist when it comes to that. So I appreciate, Nellie, your points, and I, totally understand where you're coming from. However, that being taken into account, people do move to Green Valley because they like the social aspects. They like having clubs that they can play and sports they can play. Water volleyball is a wonderful, very gentle sport that we have members in their 90s that are still playing water volleyball because the game is flexible and accommodating and can be really played by almost anyone. And so, that's just something we want. We don't want the club to diminish in numbers because we don't have anywhere to play. So again, thanks to Steve for giving us a temporary home. And, maybe eventually an aquatics sports pool is created or something like that. So anyway, I appreciate all of you. You guys are doing a great job. And thank you for at least considering, just taking a lot of good time to consider the options. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us today. My name is Sue Bennett. I'm sorry, my eyes aren't good enough to give you my number. But I do want to say that I've been playing volleyball for over a year and a half over at the South Abrego pool. The one thing I do like about it is we do have our sand court there, and several of them go from sand into water. The other thing is it has some amazing parking, which we've noticed is kind of lacking over at the North Abrego pool. I don't know if anybody's been by there when all activities are going on, but they could have shuffleboard players with sand and water starting, and sometimes a horseshoe game. And it's nice to have that parking at Abrego South. But again, we do understand your fiscal responsibilities. But if we don't have a South Abrego pool, it's not an area that I would want to live in. And it is a big distance between the East Center and the Springs. And when you think about it, you have to go west to CP 1 or 2. That's quite a distance. And for folks that use their bikes and walk and golf carts, I don't know that that would be a distance a lot of people would want to take in that community. So I really hope that you consider that and do put it in the budget, because it is an important community pool for a lot of people in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Okay. Well, I think we've pretty much concluded the agenda.
Hold on.
All right, hold on.
Sorry. We have to present our Plan B option.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, Scott.
Assuming the member change fee refunds stay as they are, we have to present an updated budget, but we will do this quickly. We're going to do a handout for you. We're going to hand that out. This was emailed, I think, or it's going to be emailed to those at home. And again, this says, for consideration, should the board through a straw poll oppose the elimination of the member change fee refunds other than those required by law, staff has developed a budget alternative that we're referring to as Plan B. And here are the recommendations based on what we know. No elimination of member change fee refunds. This results in an approximate $150,000 revenue reduction in 26 and a 300,000 plus reduction in the forecasted years 27 through 29. Assuming that the refunds are not eliminated, the initiatives fund is estimated to be reduced by approximately 30,000 in 26.
300.
I'm sorry. 300? No, it is 30,000.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, 30,000 in 26. Is that right? That is right. And 60,000 in forecasted years 27 through 29. Dues rates, we've talked a lot about dues today, but in order to make up for those changes and that loss in revenue, dues rates would need to go back to what was originally recommended by the Fiscal Affairs Committee, which was $545. That would make up for that loss. Now that's a mid-year loss, and again, that's for 26. We're you know, and this is another one. If Abrego South is eliminated, 20,000 in savings and utilities would be for 26 and approximately 40,000 for future years. I think that's premature at this point, so we won't even consider that bullet. This is a very detailed and probably way hard to see. Can I see one of those, by the way? Wow, thank you. The changes, again, aren't significant. We've talked about those. The member change fee would increase for Plan B up from 538 to 545. And then utilities, we had utilities in here, but we would leave those the same. And then what is it? Reserve funding from initiatives. That reserve funding would decrease down to 575 for this 26 year instead of 605. So that's just a decreased transfer to initiatives. And you can see based on this, I want to get into what dues would need to look like in 27, 28, and 29. That's the very small chart on the right side here. Without that revenue, and we've talked a bit about dues again, in 27, we would estimate those dues have to increase to 573, in 2008 to 595, and in 29, 616. And that's to cover the revenue that could have been achieved from receiving the revenue from the refunds. So that is the Plan B, and given that the interest of the board was to not move forward with that. Again, we have to forward the FAC recommendation, and we'll forward that recommendation for the operating plan as it is, but we want you to know what the Plan B is. And so we will be providing the Plan B as an alternative for board consideration. Again, refunds would maintain, and so revenue would decrease, but that revenue has to be made up on the dues side, and that's essentially how that would work. Any questions from the board?
Really?
Madam Chair, if we can, between now and the next meeting, can we take a look at the 2027 member fee increase, both on the FAC and on the, we did a lot of moving of the numbers just to double check. Because I'm thinking we took some dollars out of the salary line and just to make sure that and verify the 5.1%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to double check it on that first year. It's going to be increasing more, but I just want to double check that on the recommendations.
Oh,
That's what we'll come up with.
okay. Certainly.
Check it.
Yeah. And these are projections again, so a lot of things can change, but we do our best to project so that we can appropriately plan and not be surprised.
Bev?
Bev has a quick.
I would like to say what I said before about the previous budget projections. Can we not modify the dues increases, total amount between 26 and 29, and make them more even every year so we don't have a big jump in 27? I mean, 26 could be a little more, 29 could be a little more, and 27 could be a little less. Can we not balance that out?
We can absolutely do this. These numbers are just based on balancing the budget. It's the amount that we needed in order to balance the budget based on all the projections, assuming inflationary factors, costs of things changing. But we could certainly try to make it a more gradual change, as long as each year is more or less balanced, or in a surplus.
Okay. With that, I would like to thank the staff for a huge, huge project that they provided for us for this workshop. And I know that all of the staff members over here on the left were involved, all of their departments, along with David, primarily David with his whip. But I would like to thank staff for putting so much effort into this budget and looking at all the different prospects, all the different options that could happen with this. So with that, do we have any other member comments? Okay, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
A motion
Beth?
to adjourn?
Beth's got a
Second.
motion to adjourn. And Beth Dingman is going to second. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And thank you all to the members